Okay, today our goal is to be able to choose the best regression model for the data. So the last couple of days, what you've done is you've entered data into the graphing calculator, created a scatter plot, and did a regression to end up with either a linear, quadratic, or exponential equation. Now, what happens is, so far, they told you whether it was linear, quadratic, or exponential. Today, they're not going to. So it's not that it's any more difficult than what you've been doing already. So what we're looking at is regression models, the scatter plot. Okay, first of all, technology requires you, and I important you, to choose the type of graphical model that best suits a scatter plot. Your graphing calculator will do whatever you tell it to do, okay? But it doesn't think. That's something you have to do. So after you determine the type of model, out of the three we've been talking, you then must tell the graphing calculator what type of regression to use. Okay, so you're going to have to determine that. Now, usually what happens is regression is a complicated mathematical process. And what I mean by a complicated mathematical process is before the graphing calculators, you could actually come up with a regression model, a regression equation for the data. However, you would have had to do some heavy duty math to get it, and it would be very tedious and time consuming. So, um, so what we're doing is it's a complicated mathematical process that will determine the equation that suits, should be there, that suits the scatter plot. Okay, so what we mean that suits the scatter plot is we have to determine that. So if it looks like it's a parabola and you choose a regression that is a line, obviously that wouldn't suit the data, that wouldn't suit the scatter plot. So this regression equation is also called, you've seen this before, the line of best fit. So what you have in front of you now is numerous graphs, scatter plots, and we're going to talk about what kind of regression model would you choose if this was on your graphing calculator. So just not some heavy duty thinking today. Okay, so let's look at the very first one. If I just take again my cursor is fairly large, you can see that. So what happens if I follow the points, it appears that the points in general are going upward. Do they appear to have some kind of curve to them? Well, there's a few here and there, but I would choose, if I was going to choose something, I would probably choose a linear model, because if I take and do a line of best fit, for the most part I have points on either side. So it would be a good guess for this one to actually choose then, and I'm going to actually take the typing again, and so this one I would probably choose linear. Yep. So I would choose linear, keep hitting the wrong buttons. So I would choose linear regression. Okay, now the next one, for instance, when I look at it, and I'll just move this over here so it's out of my way. When I look at it, and again, if I take my cursor, or you could take your finger, you can see I reach a high point, but then I start coming down again. Well, lines don't do that, and neither do exponential. So in this case, I would probably choose the same one you would choose. It looks something like a U. Okay, it's not perfect, and that's why the graphing calculator requires you to do some thinking. So this one I would choose quadratic. And let's look at the third example I have here. This one's maybe a little bit harder because I can't see exactly what's happening at the different axes. But in general, if I take this, and actually I might even take a highlighter because it's thicker, and I follow it, okay, it looks like it's turning, and I'm not quite sure what happens over here. So some of them I have to do a little bit more thinking. Obviously I'm not going to think that it's linear because it doesn't look like a straight line. Quadratic, possibly, but I can't see what's going to happen here. Is it going to go back up? Maybe. But just based on what I have here, I could choose either quadratic or exponential. So in fact, I think For this one, I'm going to choose exponential, but again, that's just a guess on my part. Okay, and we can talk a little bit about how to determine that because there are some other features in the graphing calculator that would give us a better indication which one it was. Okay, moving on to our next example. Okay, now this one again, if I'm going to use my highlighter because it appears to do a nice job as soon as I find it again. This time I'm going to use yellow. So it looks like I have a point up the top here. I'm not sure whether that printed off well for you. I'm coming down, down, down. Um, I didn't want to do it. It's saying it's line, but obviously you can see it's not a line. So obviously I can't use the highlighter. So it looks like it's coming down, but then what happens is it goes back up again. So the only model that I know that will do that is, you guessed it, it's a parabola. So it's going to be a quadratic regression that I'm going to use for that one. If I look at the next one, and this one is another tricky one. I'm not quite sure because there's a cluster of points in here. And I'll show you what I could do is I could go, it maybe goes like that. Or I could say, no, it's just a straight line. I definitely could say that it doesn't appear to be a parabola. So it doesn't appear to be quadratic. But now what I'm guessing is I'm going to have to guess, is it a line? Okay. Or is it some kind of exponential thing? Okay. And again, it is a judgment, a human judgment on which one it is. Now, probably if I had this one, I'm not sure. Again, I might use the graphing calculator to find some other things. It appears that it's obviously going upward. I'm not quite sure about the curve of it. For this one here, I think I'm going to, again, I'm going to choose linear. Okay, again, that's just a guess on my part. If I look at the next one, it's a little bit easier for me to see on this one. Again, I have something that changes directions. I'm going up and then I'm going down. It's kind of on a curve thing. This in here, this area in here, which I'm going to use with the magic pen, doesn't really appear to be a parabola part. But if I look at the rest, oops, if I look at the rest of it, if I look over here, that definitely does look like a parabola. So in this case, again, I'm going to choose quadratic because I think it best suits. Okay, so it's not perfect, but I think it best suits. And if we look at our last examples here, okay, I'm just going to bring this page up. Again, this one here, I'm starting off really close to that x-axis, but then I seem to appear to be going upward. This one to me, because I'm so close to the x-axis and then go up at a fairly, decent rate there, I think that I would say that this one here, I would choose exponential. And the next one again is a difficult one. In some respects. It doesn't look like it's a straight line. It could be, but it appears that I'm doing something like this. Okay, I can't again see what's going on here. It doesn't really satisfy exponential. Okay, it could maybe, if I look at my axis here, this is only 30, and so it appears that I'm missing stuff here. However, an exponential doesn't kind of go off this way. Even if it was growth, it would go up more this way. So this one I'm going to say is quadratic because, again, I'm assuming that what's happening on this side is maybe it's going to go down. So again, I'm basing it on maybe. So this one I'm going to say it's quadratic. And then the last one. The last one, again, I can see that I'm up here at some point and I'm down here at some point, and it appears that something's going on in here. And it's possible that it's a parabola or it's possible it's exponential. Again, it's a call. And as I said, sometimes it's hard to say whether it's exponential or it's quadratic. So in some cases, what you would do is you could actually get the regression, both equations from the graphing calculator, enter them in and get the graphing calculator to graph your regression equations and see which one you think after that fits the data best. Okay, so you can actually do that. and that would be even better. Okay, so today what you're really doing is doing scatter plots. After the scatter plot is done, you're making a judgment call at which type of regression you're going to use. Okay, if you're unsure, make sure you're asking me, and we can sit down and we can look at different options to figure out which one exactly it is. Okay, so have fun with those graphing calculators.